Right now, as you hear these words, 95% of people who vowed to transform their lives this year have already given up. They made bold promises. They felt the surge of motivation. They told themselves this time will be different. But here's the cold, brutal truth no one dares to face. Motivation betrayed them. Willpower abandoned them. And just like that, they slipped back into the very life they swore they'd escape while you're still listening. But you're still here. You press play, and that single action separates you from the majority who have already given up. This is not another book about discipline that will collect dust on your mental shelf. This is a 30-day system that will rewire your brain, redesign your environment, and rebuild your life from the ground up. I know this works because I lived it. 30 days ago from when I started this journey, I was exactly where you might be right now. Lost, frustrated, tired of my own excuses. Let me take you back to a moment that changed everything for me. It was a Tuesday morning. The alarm had gone off 3 times. I hit snooze each time, telling myself I deserved 5 more minutes. Then 10, then 30. By the time I dragged myself out of bed, half the morning was gone. I looked at my phone and saw 17 unread messages, a calendar full of tasks I'd been postponing for weeks, and that familiar feeling of pressure building in my chest. I had goals, big ones. I had dreams that kept me awake at night. But between the person I wanted to become and the person staring back at me in the mirror, there was a gap. A massive, painful gap filled with broken promises, half-finished projects, and comfortable lies I kept telling myself. I'll start Monday. I work better under pressure. I just need to feel motivated first. Sound familiar? Here's what I discovered that morning, sitting on the edge of my bed with my head in my hands. I wasn't lacking motivation. I wasn't lacking time. I wasn't even lacking knowledge about what I should do. I was lacking a system. And that realization, that single thought, became the foundation of everything you're about to learn. Let's talk about what discipline actually is. Because most people get this completely wrong. The average person thinks discipline means forcing yourself to do things you hate. They imagine waking up at 4 in the morning, suffering through cold showers, and white-knuckling through every uncomfortable moment until their willpower breaks. Elite performers know something different. They understand that discipline is not about punishment. It's not about pain for the sake of pain. Discipline is simply the bridge between who you are and who you want to become. It's a series of small actions, repeated consistently, until they become automatic. Think about that for a moment. Every disciplined person you admire, every successful entrepreneur, every elite athlete, every person who seems to have their life together, they don't have more willpower than you. They don't have more hours in their day. They have better systems. They've designed their lives so that the right actions feel easier than the wrong ones. And in the next 30 days, you're going to build that exact same system for yourself. Here's the first revelation that most self-help books won't tell you. Motivation is unreliable. I know that sounds strange in a book designed to change your life. But stay with me. Motivation is an emotion. It comes and goes like weather. Some mornings you wake up ready to conquer the world. Other mornings, the comfort of your bed feels like the only thing that makes sense. If you build your entire life strategy around waiting to feel motivated, you will fail. Not because you're weak, not because you lack potential, but because you're building on sand instead of stone. The average person waits to feel motivated before taking action. The disciplined person takes action and lets motivation follow. This distinction will save your life. You see, your brain doesn't care about your goals. Your mind is designed for one primary purpose: survival. And survival, in neurological terms, means conserving energy and avoiding pain. Every time you try to do something new, something uncomfortable, something that requires effort, your brain interprets it as a threat. That voice in your head saying, "Do it later," that's not laziness. That's your ancient survival programming trying to keep you safe. The problem is, safe doesn't lead anywhere. Comfort doesn't create growth. And the path of least resistance always leads to the same destination: regret. So how do you override millions of years of evolutionary programming? Not through willpower. Willpower is a limited resource. Studies show that your capacity for self-control depletes throughout the day like a battery. By evening, most people have nothing left. That's why you can resist junk food all day and then find yourself raiding the refrigerator at midnight. The answer is environment design combined with microactions. Let me explain what I mean. When I decided to transform my life, I didn't make a massive list of goals. I didn't create a vision board. I didn't try to overhaul everything at once. Instead, I focused on one principle that changed my entire understanding of human behavior. First principle of discipline: make the right action easier than the wrong action. This sounds simple. It is simple, but simple doesn't mean easy, and most people never actually do it. Here's an example. I wanted to exercise every morning. For years, I had failed at this goal. I would set my alarm, feel a burst of motivation the night before, and then hit snooze when morning came. The friction between my bed and the gym was too high. My brain chose comfort every single time. So I changed the environment. I started sleeping in my workout clothes. I put my running shoes right next to my bed. I prepared a small glass of water on my nightstand, so the first action of my day was already decided. The result? I didn't have to think. I didn't have to summon motivation. I just had to follow the path of least resistance, which I had redesigned to lead somewhere useful. This is what we'll build together. Not a motivation hack. Not a temporary burst of discipline that fades after a week. A system that makes good choices automatic and bad choices difficult. Now, I need to tell you something important about the journey ahead. These 30 days will not always feel good. There will be moments when you want to quit. There will be mornings when every fiber of your being screams for the comfort of your old routine. There will be pressure, real pressure, as you push against the boundaries of who you've always been. But here's what I want you to understand. That discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that something is changing. Your brain will resist. It's supposed to. Every time you feel that resistance, you're standing at the edge of growth. And you have a choice in that moment. You can listen to the excuses. You can retreat to what feels safe. Or you can take one small action forward and prove to yourself that you're capable of more than you believed. Pain is temporary. The pain of discipline lasts for a moment. The pain of regret lasts a lifetime. And I promise you, I absolutely promise you, that the person you'll become in 30 days will look back at this moment and thank you for not giving up. Here's what the next 30 days will look like. Each chapter of this book corresponds to a phase of your transformation. We'll move through 4 weeks, each building on the last. You'll learn the neuroscience behind habit formation, not to impress you, but to show you exactly why these techniques work. You'll receive specific microtasks designed to be completed in minutes, not hours. You'll track your progress weekly so you can see measurable results instead of hoping for vague improvement. By the end of week 1, you'll have established your foundational routine. By the end of week 2, you'll have built real momentum. By the end of week 3, you'll have survived your first major setback and come out stronger. By the end of week 4, you'll have a sustainable system that doesn't require motivation to maintain. This isn't theory. This is the exact process I used to rebuild my life. And thousands of people have now used these same principles to transform theirs. But none of that matters if you don't make one decision right now. You have to decide, in this moment, that you're going to see this through. Not when it's easy, not when you feel like it, but especially when every part of you wants to quit. The average person consumes information and does nothing. The elite performer consumes information and takes immediate action. Which one will you be? The next chapter is where we truly begin. I'm going to show you what I call Day Zero, the mental reset that makes everything else possible. You'll learn exactly how to prepare your mind, your environment, and your life for the 30 days ahead. But I'll warn you now, Day Zero requires something uncomfortable. It requires you to be completely honest about where you are and why you failed before. Most people can't handle that level of honesty. Most people would rather believe comfortable lies than face uncomfortable truths. But you're not most people. You're still here. And that tells me everything I need to know about what you're capable of. Chapter 2, Day Zero, the science of starting over. Before you build anything new, you have to clear the ground. And right now, your mind is cluttered with the debris of every failed attempt, every broken promise, every time you told yourself, this will be different, and it wasn't. Day Zero is not day 1. Day 1 is when you start building. Day Zero is is when you prepare the foundation. And most people skip this step entirely, which is exactly why they fail. In the next few minutes, you're going to learn something about your brain that will change how you approach every challenge for the rest of your life. You'll understand exactly why you've struggled with discipline until now. And more importantly, you'll know precisely how to rewire your mind for the 30 days ahead. This is where the real transformation begins. Let me ask you a question that might feel uncomfortable. How many times have you started over? How many Mondays have been the Monday? How many journals sit half empty in your drawer? How many gym memberships have you purchased with the best intentions, only to watch them become expensive reminders of goals you abandoned? If you're being honest, truly honest, the number is probably higher than you'd like to admit. Here's what nobody tells you about those failures. They weren't really about discipline. They were about neuroscience. Your brain operates on a simple principle. It seeks pleasure and avoids pain. Every decision you make, every action you take or avoid, runs through this ancient filter. Your mind doesn't care about your 5-year plan. It cares about what feels good right now. This is why you can know exactly what you should do and still not do it. This is why you can watch yourself make the same mistakes again and again, feeling powerless to stop. You're not fighting yourself. You're fighting millions of years of evolution. And you've been fighting with the wrong weapons. Here's the second revelation that will reshape your understanding of change. Second principle of discipline. Your brain cannot distinguish between a real experience and a vividly imagined one. Think about that for a moment. When you imagine eating your favorite food, your mouth waters. When you recall an embarrassing memory, your face flushes with heat. When you think about someone you love, your heart rate changes. Your thoughts create physical responses in your body. Your mind shapes your reality. This is not motivational fluff. This is neuroscience. Brain imaging studies have shown that when you visualize performing an action, the same neural pathways activate as when you actually perform it. Athletes use this principle to improve performance. Musicians use it to master difficult passages. And you're going to use it to build discipline. The average person thinks about their goals and feels the pain of the gap between where they are and where they want to be. The elite performer thinks about their goals and feels the certainty of who they're becoming. Same brain, different programming, completely different results. Day 0 is about reprogramming. But before we install new software, we need to understand the operating system you're currently running. Your brain contains roughly 86 billion neurons. Each neuron can connect with thousands of others, creating pathways that determine how you think, feel, and act. Every time you repeat a thought or behavior, you strengthen the neural pathway associated with it. This is how habits form, not through willpower, through repetition. When you hit the snooze button, you're not just delaying your alarm. You're reinforcing the neural pathway that says, comfort now is more important than goals later. Every repetition makes that pathway stronger, faster, more automatic. When you scroll social media instead of working, you're training your brain to seek instant gratification. When you make excuses for why today isn't the right day to start, you're building the excuse-making muscle. Your current life is the sum of your repeated actions. And your repeated actions are the product of your dominant neural pathways. Here's the good news. Those pathways can change. Neuroplasticity is the scientific term for your brain's ability to rewire itself. For decades, scientists believed the adult brain was fixed, that you were stuck with whatever patterns you developed by adulthood. We now know that's completely wrong. Your brain is changing right now. As you listen to these words, new connections are forming. Old ones are weakening. The thoughts you think most often are literally reshaping the physical structure of your mind. This means two things. First, every day you continue your old patterns, they become harder to break. The neural pathways grow stronger. The comfort zone grows more comfortable. The gap between who you are and who you want to be grows wider. Second, and this is where hope lies, every day you practice new patterns, they become easier to maintain. The discipline pathway grows stronger. The new routine feels more natural. The person you're becoming starts to feel more real than the person you used to be. This is why the 30-day timeline matters. It's not arbitrary. It's neurological. Research suggests that forming a new habit takes anywhere from 18 to 66 days, depending on complexity. 30 days puts you right in the middle of that window, long enough to create real neural change, short enough to maintain focus and intensity. But those 30 days must be consecutive. Every time you break the chain, you weaken the new pathway and strengthen the old one. Consistency isn't just important, it's everything. Now let's talk about what day zero actually requires from you. The first task is brutal honesty. I want you to think about the last time you tried to build discipline and failed. Don't rush past this. Sit with it. Feel the weight of that memory. What excuses did you make? Maybe you told yourself you were too busy. Maybe you said you'd start when things calmed down at work. Maybe you blamed your environment, your family, your circumstances. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Those excuses were lies. Comfortable lies that protected your ego but destroyed your progress. The average person blames external circumstances for internal failures. The elite performer takes complete ownership of their results. I'm not saying this to make you feel guilty. Guilt is useless. I'm saying this because you need to understand the mental pattern that has been sabotaging you. Every time you make an excuse, you surrender control. You tell your brain that you're not in charge of your own life. And your brain believes you. It stops looking for solutions because you've already decided the problem is unsolvable. Day zero is about reclaiming that control. Here's your first assignment. This is non-negotiable. I want you to write down or speak aloud if you're driving the 3 biggest excuses you've used to justify your lack of discipline. Be specific. Don't say, "I was busy." Say exactly what you told yourself. "I was too tired after work. I'll have more time next month. I deserve a break." Now, for each excuse, I want you to ask one question. Is this actually true, or is this just comfortable? The time excuse falls apart when you realize you have time for social media. The energy excuse crumbles when you notice you have energy for things you enjoy. The circumstance excuse dissolves when you see people in worse situations achieving more. These excuses aren't protecting you. They're imprisoning you. And today, right now, on day zero, you're breaking out. The second task is identity declaration. This is where the neuroscience we discussed becomes practical. Your brain filters reality through your beliefs about yourself. If you believe you're not a morning person, your mind will find evidence to support that belief and ignore evidence that contradicts it. If you believe you always procrastinate, you'll unconsciously create situations where procrastination feels inevitable. We're going to use this same mechanism in your favor. I want you to complete this sentence. I am becoming someone who. Not, I want to be. Not, I wish I could be. I am becoming. This language matters. It acknowledges you're in process while claiming the destination as certain. It tells your brain that the disciplined version of you isn't a fantasy, it's a future fact. Maybe your sentence is, I am becoming someone who wakes up early and owns their morning. Maybe it's, I am becoming someone who finishes what they start. Maybe it's, I am becoming someone who chooses long-term gain over short-term comfort. Whatever it is, this becomes your anchor thought. When laziness whispers, you respond with this. When the old patterns pull, you repeat this. When the pressure of change feels too heavy, you remind yourself of who you're becoming. Your feelings will resist. Your thoughts will argue. But if you repeat this identity statement enough times, you'll start building the neural pathway that makes it true. Repetition is how your brain was programmed. Repetition is how it gets reprogrammed. The third task is environment audit. Look around your physical space. Look at your phone. Look at your daily schedule. How much of your environment is designed to help you succeed? How much is designed to keep you comfortable, distracted, numb? The average person tries to use willpower to overcome a poorly designed environment. The elite performer designs an environment that makes willpower unnecessary. We'll go deep on environment design in Chapter 4. But for day zero, I want you to identify 3 things in your environment that consistently trigger your worst behaviors. Maybe it's your phone on your nightstand, tempting you to scroll before sleep. Maybe it's junk food visible in your kitchen. Maybe it's a cluttered workspace that drains your mental energy before you even begin. Write them down. Acknowledge them. In the coming days, we're going to systematically eliminate or transform each one. Day zero is almost complete. But before we move forward, I need you to understand one final thing about the journey ahead. The next 30 days will reveal who you really are. Not who you think you are, not who you present to the world, but who you are when it's hard, when it hurts, when every comfortable option is screaming for your attention. You will meet yourself in those moments, and you will have to decide, over and over, which version of you gets to win. The old you is strong. Years of repetition have made those patterns powerful. But the new you, the disciplined you, is about to get stronger. Starting tomorrow. Chapter 3 introduces the microtask revolution, the specific system that will carry you through week 1. You'll learn why small actions create massive results, and you'll receive your first 7 days of exact assignments. But here's what I want you to think about tonight. Every expert was once a beginner. Every disciplined person was once exactly where you are now. Uncertain, hopeful, maybe a little afraid. The difference isn't talent. The difference isn't luck. The difference is they started. And they didn't stop. Tomorrow, you start. Chapter 3, Week 1, the microtask revolution. Everything you've been taught about discipline is backwards. You've been told to think big, dream massive, set goals so large they scare you. And then, through sheer force of willpower, grind your way toward them until you either succeed or burn out. Most people burn out. But what if the path to extraordinary results runs through ordinary actions? What if the secret to massive transformation isn't doing more, but doing less, with perfect consistency? Welcome to Week 1. Welcome to the microtask revolution. In the next few minutes, you're going to learn a system so simple that your mind will resist it. You'll think it can't possibly work. That's exactly what the old version of you would say. The new version, the disciplined version, is about to discover the most powerful force in human behavior. Let me tell you about the 2-minute rule that changed my life. On day 1 of my own 30-day transformation, I didn't wake up at 5 in the morning. I didn't meditate for an hour. I didn't overhaul my entire routine in a single burst of motivation. I made my bed. That's it. 2 minutes. One small action. My brain laughed at me. That's your big discipline plan? Making a bed. But here's what my brain didn't understand, and what most people never grasp. Third principle of discipline. Small actions completed consistently defeat large actions attempted sporadically. This isn't about the bed. It was never about the bed. It's about the neural pathway that gets created when you tell yourself you're going to do something and then actually do it. Every time you set an intention and follow through, you strengthen the discipline muscle. Every time you promise yourself something and deliver, you build self-trust. The size of the action doesn't matter. The completion does. The average person waits for motivation to strike before attempting massive change. The elite performer builds momentum through tiny victories until motivation becomes irrelevant. Here's the neuroscience behind why this works. Your brain produces a chemical called dopamine. You've probably heard of it, the reward neurotransmitter. What most people don't realize is that dopamine isn't just released when you achieve something. It's released when you anticipate achieving something. This is crucial. When you set a huge goal, lose 50 pounds, write a book, build a business, your brain looks at the gap between where you are and where you want to be. If that gap feels too large, dopamine drops. You feel overwhelmed, paralyzed. The goal that was supposed to motivate you actually demotivates you. But when you set a microtask, a 2-minute action you know you can complete, your brain sees the finish line. Dopamine rises. You feel pulled toward the action instead of pushing yourself through resistance. And here's where the magic happens. When you complete that microtask, you get another dopamine hit. Your brain registers success. It thinks, that felt good. Let's do more. Suddenly, you have momentum. The person who couldn't get out of bed is now looking for the next small win. This is the compound effect in action, not through superhuman effort, through strategic simplicity. I need to be direct with you about something. Your mind is going to fight this approach. It's going to tell you that small actions are beneath you, that you need to do more, be more, push harder. That thinking small is for people without ambition. This is a lie. A comfortable lie that keeps you stuck in cycles of grand plans and abandoned attempts. Think about it. How many times have you created the perfect morning routine? Waking up early, exercising, meditating, journaling, eating healthy, only to abandon all of it within a week. You tried to change everything at once, and the pressure was too much. Your brain interpreted that massive change as a threat. It activated resistance. And eventually, the path of least resistance led you right back to your old patterns. The microtask approach works because it flies under your brain's threat radar. Making your bed doesn't feel dangerous. Drinking one glass of water doesn't trigger survival instincts. Reading for 2 minutes doesn't overwhelm your capacity for change. But string enough of these small actions together, and you've built a completely new life. Let me give you your week 1 protocol. These are the exact microtasks for days 1 through 7. Day 1, the single win. Your only task today is to complete one 2-minute action that your future self will thank you for. Make your bed. Put your phone in another room for an hour. Do 10 push-ups. Clear one corner of your desk. It doesn't matter what you choose. What matters is that you choose something, you do it, and you acknowledge the completion. Don't add anything else. Don't let your ambitious mind convince you to do more. The discipline here is in the restraint, finishing what you started and nothing more. Day 2, the morning anchor. Before you check your phone, before you scroll, before you let the world's demands flood your mind, complete one intentional action. This becomes your morning anchor, a single moment of control before the chaos begins. Maybe it's stretching for 60 seconds. Maybe it's writing one sentence in a journal. Maybe it's standing outside and taking 3 deep breaths. The action takes less than 2 minutes. The impact lasts all day. You're teaching your brain something powerful. You are in control of how your day starts. Day 3, the elimination. Today, identify one small thing that consistently drains your time or energy and eliminate it. Not forever, just for today. Maybe you skip one social media check. Maybe you say no to one unnecessary commitment. Maybe you let one email wait instead of responding immediately. This is the flip side of microtasks. Just as small positive actions compound, small eliminations create space. Space for focus. Space for the things that actually matter. Day 4, the repetition lock. Today, you repeat days 1 through 3. Same actions. Same sequence. This feels boring. Good. Boring is where discipline lives. The average person chases novelty and calls it growth. The elite performer embraces repetition and creates mastery. Your brain is starting to recognize the pattern now. Neural pathways are forming. What felt like effort 3 days ago is already feeling slightly more automatic. Day 5, the time block. Today, you add one element. A 15-minute protected block of time for your most important task. Not an hour. Not your whole morning. 15 minutes. Set a timer. Close all distractions. Work on the thing that matters most to your goals, even if you don't feel like it. Especially if you don't feel like it. When the timer ends, stop, even if you want to continue. The discipline is in honoring the boundary you set, not in exceeding it. Day 6, the discomfort practice. Today, you deliberately choose something mildly uncomfortable. A cold shower for 30 seconds. A difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Skipping one comfort food you reach for automatically. This is where transformation accelerates. Every time you voluntarily face discomfort, you prove to yourself that feelings don't control you. That the voice in your head saying, "I can't," is lying. That pain, small, controlled pain, is the price of growth. Day 7, the reflection. On the final day of week 1, you take 10 minutes to review. Ask yourself, which micro tasks did I complete? Which did I skip? What resistance came up? What surprised me? This isn't about judgment. It's about awareness. The data from this week becomes the foundation for week 2. Let me address something you might be thinking. This seems too easy. How can 2-minute tasks actually change my life? I understand the doubt. I felt it too. But here's what I discovered, and what you'll discover if you commit to this process. The difficulty was never in the actions. It was in the consistency. Anyone can work out for an hour when they feel motivated. The question is, can you do something small when you feel nothing? When laziness has you pinned to the couch? When every excuse sounds perfectly reasonable? That's where discipline is forged. Not in the heroic moments, in the mundane ones. And there's another layer to this. Small actions change your identity. Every time you complete a micro task, you're casting a vote for the person you want to become. One vote doesn't decide an election, but hundreds of votes, thousands of votes. Eventually, the identity shifts. You don't just build discipline, you become a disciplined person. Here's what you need to understand about week 1. The goal is not perfection. The goal is completion rate. If you hit 70% of your micro tasks, you're succeeding. If you miss a day and get back on track the next morning, you're succeeding. If you feel resistance and do the action anyway, you're especially succeeding. What kills most people isn't failure. It's the response to failure. The average person misses one day and decides they've ruined everything. They think in all or nothing terms, either perfect execution or complete abandonment. The elite performer misses one day and treats it as data. They ask what happened, adjust if necessary, and continue without drama. This distinction will save you. Burn it into your mind. Consistency is not about never falling. It's about always getting back up. By the end of these 7 days, something will have shifted. You might not feel dramatically different. The changes happening in your brain are subtle at first. But if you pay attention, you'll notice small things. Maybe you'll reach for your phone in the morning and pause. Maybe you'll think about skipping a task and choose to do it anyway. Maybe you'll catch yourself making an excuse and actually hear how hollow it sounds. These are the early signs. The first evidence that the neural pathways are changing. The first proof that the person you're becoming is more than just a hope. In Chapter 4, we go deeper. We're going to redesign your environment so that discipline becomes nearly automatic. You'll learn the science of friction, how to make good choices easy and bad choices hard. But right now, your only job is week 1. 7 days. Tiny actions. Perfect consistency. The life you want is built one small moment at a time. And this is moment 1. Chapter 4. Redesigning your environment. You are not as free as you think you are. Every day, invisible forces shape your decisions. The placement of your phone, the layout of your kitchen, the apps on your home screen, the people you spend time with. These environmental factors are quietly controlling your behavior, and most people never even notice. Here's a truth that will change how you see the world. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And your systems are built into your environment. This chapter is about taking control of those invisible forces. By the end, you'll understand exactly how to redesign your surroundings so that discipline becomes the path of least resistance. This is where willpower becomes optional. Let me share something that transformed my understanding of human behavior. In the 1970s, researchers conducted a fascinating study on hospital cafeterias. They wanted to see if they could change what people ate, without lectures, without education, without any direct intervention at all. Their method was simple. They rearranged the food. They moved healthy options to eye level. They placed fruits near the checkout. They put water bottles at the front of every cooler and pushed sodas to the back. The result? Healthy food consumption increased by over 25%. Not because people suddenly developed more willpower, not because they learned about nutrition, simply because the environment made the right choice easier than the wrong one. This is the fourth principle that will reshape your approach to discipline. Fourth principle of discipline. Design your environment so the right action requires less effort than the wrong action. Your brain is constantly scanning for the easiest path. This isn't laziness, it's efficiency. Your mind has limited energy for decision-making, and it conserves that energy by defaulting to whatever requires the least friction. The average person fights their environment with willpower and wonders why they keep losing. The elite performer redesigns their environment and lets friction do the work. Let's talk about friction, the hidden force controlling your life. Friction is any obstacle between you and an action. It can be physical, the distance to your gym. It can be temporal, the time it takes to start a task. It can be cognitive, the mental effort required to make a decision. Every action in your life has a friction score. High friction actions are hard to start. Low friction actions happen almost automatically. Think about the behaviors you struggle to maintain. Exercise, healthy eating, focused work, deep thinking. These all tend to have high friction. You have to prepare, travel, set up, decide, resist distractions. Now think about the behaviors you can't seem to stop. Scrolling social media, snacking, watching one more episode, hitting snooze. These have almost zero friction. Your phone is in your hand. The food is in your pantry. The remote is on the couch. The snooze button is inches from your pillow. This isn't a willpower problem. This is a design problem. And design problems have design solutions. Here's how to conduct a friction audit of your life. I want you to think about your 3 biggest discipline goals. Maybe it's exercising consistently. Maybe it's eating better. Maybe it's focused work without distraction. For each goal, map out every step required to complete the desired action. Let's use exercise as an example. If your goal is to work out in the morning, here's what the friction chain might look like. Wake up, get out of bed, find workout clothes, change clothes, find shoes, fill water bottle, prepare equipment, travel to gym or workout space, start exercising. Count those steps. That's your friction score. Every step is an opportunity for your brain to say, "This is too hard," and retreat to comfort. Now let's reduce that friction. Sleep in your workout clothes. Put your shoes next to your bed. Prepare your water bottle the night before. Set up your equipment in advance. Choose a workout you can do at home. Suddenly, your friction chain looks like this. Wake up. Put on shoes. Start exercising. You've reduced 9 steps to 3. And that difference, that seemingly small environmental change, is often the difference between someone who exercises consistently and someone who doesn't. But friction works both ways. And this is where the strategy becomes powerful. Just as you can reduce friction for good behaviors, you can increase friction for bad ones. Think about your worst habits, the ones that sabotage your discipline. For most people, the phone is the primary culprit. The average person keeps their phone within arm's reach for 16 hours a day. It's the first thing they see in the morning and the last thing they touch at night. Every notification pulls their attention. Every moment of boredom triggers the reflex to scroll. The friction to check your phone is essentially zero. It's always there, always accessible, always one thumb movement away from dopamine. So increase the friction. Put your phone in another room when you need to focus. Delete social media apps and access them only through a browser. Set up screen time limits that require a password to bypass. Buy an alarm clock so your phone doesn't need to be in your bedroom. Each barrier you create is a moment of pause. A moment where your conscious mind can catch up to your automatic impulses. A moment where you can choose instead of react. I added one simple friction element to my phone usage. I moved all social media apps to a folder on my last home screen. That tiny change, 3 extra seconds of effort, reduced my daily usage by over an hour. 3 seconds of friction, 1 hour of life reclaimed. Let me give you the environmental redesign protocol I used during my 30 days. Zone 1, the bedroom. Your bedroom shapes how you start and end every day. This is prime territory for environmental control. Remove all screens except what's absolutely necessary. If possible, charge your phone outside the bedroom. Place a glass of water and your morning anchor items within reach of your bed. Make your bed immediately upon waking. This eliminates the temptation to return. The goal is simple. Your bedroom becomes a place of rest and intentional morning action, not a place of endless scrolling and snoozed alarms. Zone 2, the workspace. Whether you work from home or have a dedicated office, your workspace determines your capacity for focus. Clear everything from your desk that doesn't serve your current task. Keep your phone in a drawer or another room. Use website blockers during focus time. Have noise-canceling headphones ready. Prepare a full water bottle so you don't use thirst as an excuse to wander. Your mind mirrors your environment. A cluttered space creates cluttered thoughts. A clean, intentional workspace signals to your brain that this is a place for deep work. Zone 3, the kitchen. Your eating habits are largely determined by what's visible and accessible. Put healthy foods at eye level in your refrigerator. Store tempting snacks out of sight. Or better, don't keep them in your home at all. Prepare ingredients in advance so cooking feels less like a chore. Keep a fruit bowl on your counter as the default snack option. The best time to exercise discipline around food is at the grocery store. Not when you're tired and hungry at 10 p.m. Make the good choice once, and your environment will reinforce it repeatedly. Here's a revelation that most people miss about environment design. 5th principle of discipline. Your social environment shapes you more than your physical environment. The people around you create an invisible pressure that constantly influences your behavior. Their expectations, their habits, their beliefs about what's normal. If everyone in your life hits snooze, skips workouts, and makes excuses, those behaviors feel normal. Your brain doesn't want to stand out. It wants to fit in. So you unconsciously adopt the patterns of your social environment. The average person accepts their social circle as fixed and tries to change themselves in isolation. The elite performer strategically curates their social environment to support their goals. This doesn't mean abandoning your friends and family. It means being intentional about influence. Consume content from people who embody the discipline you want. Join communities, online or offline, where your goals are the norm. Share your 30-day commitment with at least one person who will hold you accountable. You become the average of the inputs you allow into your mind. Choose those inputs deliberately. I want to be honest with you about something. Redesigning your environment takes effort up front. It requires you to think ahead, make changes, and resist the pull of convenience. Your brain will generate excuses. I'll do it later. It's not that important. I can just use more willpower. These are the same thoughts that kept you stuck before. The difference now is that you recognize them for what they are. The voice of your old patterns fighting to survive. Every minute you spend optimizing your environment saves hours of willpower later. Every friction element you add or remove compounds over time. The person who invests in environment design once doesn't have to make the same decision 1,000 times. This is leverage. This is working smarter, not just harder. By now, you're 2 chapters into your practical toolkit. You have microtasks for daily momentum. You have environment design for automatic discipline. But there's one area we haven't addressed yet. The most important environment of all, your mind. In Chapter 5, we're going inside your head. You'll learn how to rewire the thoughts that sabotage you, how to interrupt negative patterns before they spiral, and how to build an internal environment that supports your external goals. The external changes are powerful. The internal changes are transformational. Because the truth is, you can optimize every physical space in your life. But if your mind is still working against you, if your thoughts are still repeating the old patterns of doubt and defeat, the external changes won't hold. It's time to rewire your thoughts. It's time to win the mind game. Chapter 5. The Mind Game. Rewiring your thoughts. There's a voice in your head that wants you to fail. You've heard it. Every morning when the alarm goes off. Every moment when discipline requires effort. Every time you're about to do something that matters. It whispers, "Not today. You're too tired. You deserve a break. Start tomorrow. What's the point anyway?" This voice has sabotaged more goals than laziness, more dreams than lack of talent, more lives than any external obstacle. And until you learn to master it, no amount of microtasks or environment design will save you. This chapter is about rewiring the operating system between your ears. By the end, you'll understand exactly how your thoughts control your actions and how to take back control of your thoughts. The mind game is the real game. Everything else is secondary. Let me explain what's actually happening inside your brain when you struggle with discipline. Your mind generates approximately 60,000 thoughts per day. Most of these thoughts are automatic. They arise without your conscious intention. And here's what most people never realize. Approximately 80% of those automatic thoughts are negative. Your brain evolved to scan for threats, to anticipate problems, to remember pain more vividly than pleasure. This negativity bias kept your ancestors alive. But in the modern world, it keeps you trapped. When you think about exercising, your mind automatically generates reasons not to. When you consider starting that important project, your brain floods you with doubts and fears. When you commit to discipline, your thoughts rebel with an endless stream of excuses and objections. This isn't a character flaw. This is neural programming. The average person believes their thoughts and acts accordingly. The elite performer observes their thoughts and chooses deliberately. That distinction is worth reading again, because it contains the key to everything. Sixth principle of discipline: you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that observes your thoughts. This single insight has transformed more lives than any productivity hack ever created. Right now, as you listen to these words, thoughts are arising in your mind. Maybe agreement. Maybe skepticism. Maybe thoughts about something completely unrelated. Notice them. The fact that you can notice your thoughts proves that you are separate from them. There's a you that thinks, and there's a you that watches the thinking. Most people live entirely in the thinking mind. They believe every thought that arises. They feel every feeling without question. But you have another option. You can step back. You can observe. You can choose which thoughts to follow and which to release. This is not about positive thinking. I'm not going to tell you to repeat affirmations in the mirror until you believe them. That approach has limited power because it fights thoughts with more thoughts. This is about creating space, a gap between stimulus and response, a moment of awareness where you can make a conscious choice instead of an automatic reaction. Let me give you a practical technique that changed everything for me. It's called cognitive diffusion, and it comes from a branch of psychology called acceptance and commitment therapy. When a negative thought arises, I can't do this, I'm too lazy, this is too hard. Most people engage with it. They argue with it, try to suppress it, or simply believe it and give up. Cognitive diffusion takes a different approach. Instead of fighting the thought, you simply notice it and add a prefix. I can't do this becomes, I notice I'm having the thought that I can't do this. Feel the difference? The first version is a statement of fact. Your mind presents it as truth, and your body responds accordingly. Motivation drops. Energy fades. Action feels impossible. The second version creates distance. You're not denying the thought. You're not arguing with it. You're simply acknowledging that it's a thought, a mental event, not reality. This might sound like a small linguistic trick, but the neurological impact is profound. When you defuse from negative thoughts, you activate the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational decision-making. You reduce activity in the amygdala, the fear center that triggers emotional reactions. You create a moment of control in what previously felt like automatic defeat. Here's how to apply this in real time. Tomorrow morning, when your alarm goes off and your mind starts generating excuses, don't fight them. Don't try to feel motivated. Simply notice. I notice I'm having the thought that I'm too tired. I notice I'm having the thought that 5 more minutes won't matter. I notice I'm having the thought that today isn't the right day. Then ask yourself one question. What would the disciplined version of me do right now? Not what do I feel like doing? Not what seems easiest. What would the person I'm becoming choose in this moment? And then act on that answer, regardless of the thoughts, regardless of the feelings. This is the essence of discipline, not the absence of resistance, but action despite resistance. Now let's talk about the thoughts that run deeper. Surface-level thoughts are relatively easy to catch. I don't feel like it. I'm tired. Maybe later. These arise in the moment and can be diffused with practice. But underneath those surface thoughts are beliefs, core assumptions about who you are and what you're capable of. And these beliefs are far more dangerous because they operate invisibly. I've never been disciplined. I always quit when things get hard. People like me don't succeed at this. These identity-level beliefs create a ceiling on your potential. No matter how many micro-tasks you complete or environments you redesign, if your core belief says, I'm not a disciplined person, you'll eventually sabotage yourself to maintain consistency with that identity. Your brain craves coherence. It wants your actions to match your beliefs. When there's a mismatch, it creates psychological discomfort, and usually, the beliefs win. So we have to change the beliefs. Here's the process I use to rewrite my identity-level programming. First, identify the limiting belief. What do you tell yourself about discipline, consistency, and follow-through? Be honest. Write it down or speak it aloud. Maybe it's, I'm just not a morning person. Maybe it's, I have no willpower. Maybe it's, I always start strong but never finish. Second, question the belief. Ask yourself, is this absolutely, universally true? Have there been any exceptions? Any moments when I did show discipline, even briefly? Your mind will resist this questioning. It will defend its beliefs. That's normal. Keep questioning anyway. Third, find contradictory evidence. Search your memory for times when you acted against the limiting belief. Maybe you finished a project once. Maybe you pushed through pain during a difficult moment. Maybe you showed up when you didn't feel like it. These exceptions matter. They prove the belief isn't absolute truth. It's a story you've been telling yourself. Fourth, create a new belief statement. Not a fantasy, not something so outlandish your brain rejects it, but a belief that acknowledges your growth while remaining credible. I'm becoming more disciplined every day. I've struggled with consistency before, and I'm building new patterns now. The old me quit. The new me keeps going. Fifth, reinforce through repetition. Every time you complete a micro task, every time you choose discipline over comfort, you're gathering evidence for the new belief. Stack those moments. Let them accumulate. Watch the old belief weaken as the new one grows stronger. There's another mental trap I need to warn you about. One that destroys discipline even when you're doing everything else right. All or nothing thinking. This is the voice that says, you missed one day, so the whole system is ruined. You ate one unhealthy meal, so you might as well eat whatever you want now. You didn't do it perfectly, so it doesn't count. All or nothing thinking turns small setbacks into total collapses. It's the enemy of sustainable discipline. The average person treats every failure as evidence that they can't change. The elite performer treats every failure as a data point in a longer journey. Here's the truth. You will miss days. You will fall short. You will have moments when laziness wins and comfort calls you back to old patterns. This isn't a possibility, it's a certainty. What separates those who transform from those who stay stuck isn't the absence of failure. It's the response to failure. When you stumble, the only question that matters is, what do you do next? Do you spiral into self-criticism and quit? Or do you acknowledge the setback, extract any useful lesson, and return to the path? One missed day means nothing. Two missed days mean nothing. The only thing that truly matters is whether you stop getting back up. Let me share one final mind technique before we close this chapter. It's called future self visualization, and it leverages the same neuroscience we discussed earlier, your brain's inability to fully distinguish between vivid imagination and actual experience. Close your eyes. Or if you're driving, simply listen intently and imagine. Picture yourself 30 days from now. You've completed the program. You wake up without hitting snooze. Your morning routine feels automatic. The resistance that once paralyzed you now feels manageable. You're not perfect, but you're consistent. And that consistency has compounded into visible results. How does that version of you feel? What thoughts run through their mind? What does their day look like? Hold that image. Let it become real in your mind. Now ask, what would that future self tell you right now? What advice would they give? What encouragement would they offer? This isn't fantasy. This is programming. Every time you visualize the disciplined version of yourself, you strengthen the neural pathways that lead to becoming that person. The mind game never ends. Even after 30 days, even after 30 years, your brain will still generate doubts and fears and excuses. That's its nature. But you now have tools. You can observe without believing. You can defuse from negative thoughts. You can rewrite limiting beliefs. You can respond to failure without spiraling. You're not just building discipline. You're building a new relationship with your own mind. In Chapter 6, we enter Week 2. The initial excitement is fading. The novelty has worn off. This is where most people quit and where you're going to push through. You'll learn how to build momentum that sustains itself. How to stack habits so each one reinforces the next. How to transform isolated actions into an integrated system. The foundation is set. Now we build. Chapter 6, Week 2, Building Momentum. The hardest part is behind you. Week 1 was about starting, about proving to yourself that you could complete small actions when you didn't feel like it, about laying the first bricks of a new foundation. Week 2 is different. Week 2 is about acceleration. Right now, you're in a critical window. The initial excitement has faded. The novelty of your new routine is wearing off. Your brain is starting to whisper that maybe this was just another phase, another burst of motivation that will fade like all the others. This is the moment when most people quit. And this is the moment when you're going to do something different. You're going to build momentum so powerful that discipline stops feeling like a fight. Let me explain what's happening in your brain right now. During Week 1, every disciplined action required conscious effort. You had to think about it, decide to do it, and push through resistance. This is called the effortful control phase, and it's exhausting. But something remarkable has already started. With each repetition of your microtasks, you've been carving neural pathways. These pathways are still shallow, easy to abandon, but they exist now in a way they didn't before. Week 2 is about deepening those pathways, about taking the actions that required effort and transforming them into actions that feel automatic. Seventh principle of discipline. Repetition transforms effort into ease. What feels hard today will feel natural with enough consistent practice. This isn't motivation. This is neuroscience. Your brain literally rewires itself based on repeated behavior. The actions you perform most often become the actions your brain defaults to. Think about driving a car. Remember when you first learned? Every action required conscious attention. Check mirrors, signal, brake, accelerate. Your mind was overwhelmed with the cognitive load. Now you drive without thinking. The neural pathways are so deep, so well established, that the actions happen automatically. Your conscious mind can wander while your trained brain handles the complexity. This is what we're building with discipline, not permanent struggle, automated excellence. Here's what week 2 looks like in practice. Days 8 through 14 follow a specific pattern designed to compound your week 1 foundation. Day 8, the stack. Today, you're going to connect 2 microtasks together. This technique is called habit stacking, and it's one of the most powerful tools in behavioral design. The formula is simple. After I current habit, I will new habit. Your brain already has established neural pathways for existing behaviors. By attaching new behaviors to old ones, you borrow the automation of the established habit to power the new one. For example, after I pour my morning coffee, I will write my 3 priorities for the day. After I sit down at my desk, I will take 3 deep breaths before opening any apps. After I finish lunch, I will walk for 5 minutes. Notice what's happening. You're not adding random tasks to your day. You're inserting disciplined actions into the natural flow of behaviors you already perform. Day 9, the intensity drop. This might seem counterintuitive, but stay with me. Today, you're going to deliberately do less than you're capable of. If you've been exercising for 15 minutes, drop to 10. If you've been reading for 20 minutes, stop at 12. If you've been working in focused blocks of 30 minutes, cut back to 20. Why? Because week 2 is about protecting consistency, not maximizing intensity. The average person pushes hard when they feel motivated and crashes when they don't. The elite performer maintains a sustainable pace that never requires motivation to continue. Your goal isn't to see how much you can do today. Your goal is to build a rhythm you can maintain for life. And that requires learning to pull back when your ambitious mind wants to push forward. There will be time for intensity later. Right now, we're building the foundation of unbreakable consistency. Day 10, the trigger audit. By day 10, patterns are emerging. Some triggers reliably lead to discipline. Others reliably lead to distraction. Today, you're going to map these triggers with precision. Notice what happens right before you feel resistance. Is it a certain time of day? A specific location? The presence of certain people? A particular emotional state? Notice what happens right before you feel momentum. What conditions make discipline easier? What environments support your goals? This data is gold. Once you understand your triggers, you can design your life around them, seeking the conditions that support discipline and avoiding or restructuring the ones that undermine it. Day 11, the repetition lock. Today is about deliberate repetition. You're going to perform your core microtasks with conscious attention, not rushing through them, but fully present in each action. When you make your bed, feel the sheets beneath your hands. When you exercise, notice your breath and your heartbeat. When you write or work, observe the focus arising in your mind. This mindful repetition does something powerful. It strengthens the neural pathways faster than distracted action. It transforms routine into ritual. It teaches your brain that these moments matter. Most people repeat their habits while thinking about something else. Their bodies go through the motions while their minds wander. But distracted repetition builds weak pathways. Focused repetition builds pathways that last. Day 12, the pressure test. You've been building in controlled conditions. Today, we introduce pressure. Deliberately make something harder. Cut your available time in half. Add a minor obstacle. Put yourself in an environment with more distractions than usual. Then complete your discipline routine anyway. This is stress inoculation. By practicing discipline under slightly difficult conditions, you're preparing yourself for the inevitable days when life doesn't cooperate with your plans. The person who only performs when conditions are perfect will rarely perform at all. Real life is messy. Real life has pressure and interruptions and unexpected demands. The disciplined person doesn't need perfect conditions. They've trained themselves to execute regardless. Day 13. The reward connection. Today, you're going to consciously pair your discipline with a meaningful reward. Not junk food, not mindless scrolling. A reward that your brain genuinely values and that doesn't undermine your progress. Maybe it's 10 minutes of music you love after completing your morning routine. Maybe it's a walk outside after a focused work session. Maybe it's a phone call with someone you enjoy after hitting your daily targets. The neuroscience here is direct. When you pair an action with a reward, your brain releases dopamine and associates that positive feeling with the action itself. Over time, the action becomes intrinsically rewarding. You start to crave the discipline, not just the reward that follows. This is how lasting change feels. Not like constant sacrifice, like a life designed around things that genuinely fulfill you. Day 14, the weekly review. The final day of week 2 mirrors day 7. You step back and assess. But now you're looking at 2 weeks of data. Patterns are clearer. Progress is visible. And if you've been consistent, something inside you has shifted. Ask yourself, what worked? What didn't? What resistance came up repeatedly? What victories surprised you? And most importantly, do you feel different than you did 14 days ago? Let me talk about something that might be happening right now. Around day 10, many people hit what I call the doubt window. The initial energy has faded. The end goal still feels far away. And the mind starts asking uncomfortable questions. Is this really worth it? Am I actually changing? What if I'm just fooling myself again? These thoughts are normal. They're almost universal. And they're not a sign that something is wrong. They're a sign that you're in the messy middle. The space between who you were and who you're becoming. This is where transformation actually happens. Not in the exciting beginning. Not in the triumphant end. In the uncomfortable middle where nothing feels certain. The average person interprets doubt as evidence that they should quit. The elite performer interprets doubt as evidence that they're growing. When those thoughts arise, don't fight them. Notice them. Apply the diffusion technique from chapter 5. And then take the next small action anyway. Action defeats doubt. Not argument. Not positive thinking. Action. There's a concept I need to introduce before we move forward. It's called the compound effect, and it explains why most people dramatically underestimate what consistent discipline can achieve. Imagine you improve by just 1% each day. 1% is tiny, barely noticeable. After a week, you might not see any difference at all. But that 1% compounds. Day after day, week after week, the gains accumulate. After 30 days, you haven't improved by 30%. You've improved by roughly 34%, because each gain builds on the previous gains. After a year of 1% daily improvement, you're not twice as good. You're 37 times better than when you started. This is the mathematics of discipline. Small actions repeated consistently create results that seem impossible from the outside. When people look at highly disciplined individuals, they see the accumulated results. They don't see the thousands of small moments that created those results. So they assume it requires superhuman ability. It doesn't. It requires repetition. It requires consistency. It requires showing up when you don't feel like it and trusting the compound effect to do its work. You're 14 days into this process. The compound effect is already working for you, even if you can't see it yet. Here's what separates week 2 from week 1. In week 1, you were learning that you could do this. Each completed task was a surprise, a small victory against your own expectations. In week 2, you're learning that you will do this. Completion becomes less about proving something and more about expressing something. Expressing the person you're becoming through consistent action. The shift is subtle but profound. You stop asking, "Can I?" and start asking, "How will I?" This is identity level change in action. The behaviors are shaping the beliefs. The repetition is rewiring not just your habits, but your sense of who you are. As we close week 2, I want you to acknowledge something. You've now completed 14 days of deliberate discipline, 14 days of choosing discomfort over comfort, 14 days of taking action when your mind offered excuses. This is not nothing. This is significant. Many people go their entire lives without 2 consecutive weeks of intentional self-improvement. They live in cycles of motivation and regression, starting and stopping, hoping and quitting. You've broken that cycle. Not permanently, not yet, but you've proven that a different pattern is possible. In Chapter 7, we address the biggest threat to your progress, the day when motivation completely fails. You'll learn why discipline and motivation are not the same thing, and how to execute your system when you feel absolutely nothing. Because that day is coming. Maybe it's already here. And when it arrives, you'll be ready. Chapter 7. When motivation fails. Today is the day you don't feel like it. Maybe it's not today. Maybe it's tomorrow or the day after. But this day is coming. The day when you wake up with zero motivation. When the fire that carried you through the first 2 weeks has burned down to cold ash. When every fiber of your being screams for you to stay in bed, skip the routine, and return to the comfort of your old life. This chapter exists for that day. Because here's the truth that separates those who transform their lives from those who don't. Motivation will always fail you. The only question is what you do when it does. Let me destroy a myth that has been sabotaging your progress for years. You've been taught that motivation is the fuel of achievement. That successful people feel driven, inspired, passionate about their goals every single day. That if you could just find the right motivation, the right why, discipline would feel easy. This is a lie. A comfortable lie that keeps millions of people trapped in cycles of starting and stopping. The truth? Highly disciplined people don't have more motivation than you. They've simply learned to stop depending on it. The average person waits to feel motivated before taking action. The disciplined person takes action and lets feelings follow, or doesn't, and acts anyway. This distinction will save your life. Not metaphorically, literally. Because the life you want, the health, the success, the relationships, the peace of mind, none of it is built in the moments when you feel like it. It's built in the moments when you feel nothing at all, and you act anyway. Let me tell you about the worst day of my 30-day transformation. It was day 19. I woke up exhausted. Not the normal tiredness that fades with coffee, but a bone-deep weariness that felt like my body was made of lead. My mind was fog. My emotions were flat. The idea of doing anything, even the smallest micro-task, felt impossible. Every excuse I'd ever used came flooding back. You've been working hard. You deserve a break. One day won't matter. You can start again tomorrow. And here's the thing. Those excuses weren't entirely wrong. I had been working hard. One day probably wouldn't destroy everything. Starting again tomorrow was technically an option, but I knew something that my exhausted brain was trying to make me forget. The pain of discipline is temporary. The pain of regret lasts forever. If I quit on day 19, I wouldn't just lose one day. I would prove to myself that when things got hard, I gave up. I would strengthen the neural pathway that says, feelings determine action. I would add another failure to the long list of times I started something and couldn't finish. So I made a deal with myself. I would do the absolute minimum. Not my full routine. Not anything impressive. Just one small action to keep the chain unbroken. I made my bed. That was it. 2 minutes of discipline on the worst day of the journey. And you know what happened? After making the bed, I felt slightly less terrible. So I drank a glass of water. Then I did 5 push-ups. Not my usual 20, just 5. Then I wrote 1 sentence in my journal. None of it felt good. None of it felt motivated. But each tiny action created a small amount of momentum. And by the end of that miserable morning, I had completed a stripped-down version of my routine. That day taught me more about discipline than all the motivated days combined. 8th principle of discipline. On your worst days, shrink the task until it's impossible to fail. Any action is infinitely better than no action. This is the minimum viable discipline concept. When motivation disappears completely, you don't abandon the system. You scale it down to its smallest possible version. Can't work out for 30 minutes? Do 2 minutes. Can't write 1,000 words? Write 1 sentence. Can't meditate for 10 minutes? Take 3 conscious breaths. Can't complete your full morning routine? Make your bed. The specific action almost doesn't matter. What matters is that you maintain the identity. You remain someone who acts despite feelings. Someone who shows up even when showing up hurts. This is the difference between discipline and motivation. Motivation asks, do I feel like doing this? Discipline asks, is this who I want to become? And then discipline acts, regardless of the answer to the first question. Let's go deeper into why motivation is fundamentally unreliable. Motivation is an emotion. Like all emotions, it fluctuates based on factors largely outside your control. Your sleep quality, your stress levels, your hormones, what you ate, whether the sun is shining, whether you had a good interaction or a difficult one. Building your life strategy on motivation is like building a house on sand. When conditions are favorable, everything seems stable. But the moment pressure arrives, the moment life gets difficult, the foundation shifts and everything collapses. The average person blames themselves when motivation fades. They think something is wrong with them, that they lack willpower, lack drive, lack whatever quality makes disciplined people different. Nothing is wrong with you. Motivation is supposed to fade. That's what emotions do. What you need isn't more motivation. What you need is a system that operates independently of how you feel. This is what we've been building. The micro tasks don't require motivation. They're too small to resist. The environment design doesn't require motivation. It makes good choices automatic. The identity work doesn't require motivation. It reframes action as self-expression rather than self-sacrifice. You've been building a motivation-proof system this entire time. Now it's time to trust it. There's a deeper layer to this that I want you to understand. When you act without motivation, you prove something to yourself. You prove that you are not controlled by your feelings. You prove that laziness is a sensation, not a command. You prove that the voice in your head offering comfort and excuses does not have the final word. This proof accumulates. Each time you act despite not wanting to, you strengthen the belief that you can act despite not wanting to. The identity of being a disciplined person becomes more real, more solid, more automatic. And eventually, though it might be hard to believe right now, discipline starts to feel different. Not easy exactly, but natural, like an expression of who you are rather than a fight against who you've been. The pain of discipline becomes familiar, almost comfortable in its own way. You stop fearing the days when motivation disappears because you've survived them before. You know you can survive them again. This is the transformation that no amount of motivated effort can create. It only comes through the fire of unmotivated action. Here's a practical protocol for the zero motivation days. Step 1. Acknowledge the feeling without judging it. Don't fight the lack of motivation. Don't criticize yourself for feeling this way. Simply notice, I have no motivation today. That's a fact, not a failure. Step 2. Invoke your identity. Remind yourself who you're becoming. I am someone who acts despite feelings. I am someone who keeps promises to myself. I am becoming disciplined. This isn't positive thinking, it's identity anchoring. Step 3. Shrink the task to minimum viable action. Ask yourself, what is the absolute smallest version of my discipline routine that still counts? What would take less than 2 minutes, but maintain the chain? Step 4. Take that action immediately. Don't think about it further. Don't negotiate. Don't plan. Just move your body and complete the miniature task. Step 5. Decide what's next only after completing the first action. Sometimes, the tiny action creates enough momentum to do more. Sometimes, it doesn't. Both outcomes are acceptable. The only unacceptable outcome is zero action. Step 6. Acknowledge your victory. You showed up on a day when everything in you wanted to quit. That's not nothing. That's the essence of discipline made visible. Let yourself feel that accomplishment. I need to address something you might be thinking. But if I always do the minimum, how will I ever make real progress? Fair question. Here's the answer. Minimum viable discipline is for the bad days, not every day. On normal days, you do your full routine. On good days, you might even exceed it. The minimum exists as a floor, not a ceiling. Think about it mathematically. If you have 30 days and you do your full routine on 20 of them, a reduced routine on 8 of them, and nothing on 2 of them, you've maintained 93% consistency. But if you try to do the full routine every single day and quit entirely on the difficult days, you might start strong and end with complete collapse by day 15. The minimum viable approach keeps you in the game long enough for the good days to do their work. It turns potential zeros into small wins. It prevents the all-or-nothing thinking that destroys most discipline attempts. Life will not always cooperate with your plans. Some days will be brutal. Some days, laziness will feel like a physical weight pressing you into the mattress. Some days, the pain of action will seem unbearable. Those are the days that define you, not the easy days, the hard ones. Here's what I want you to carry forward from this chapter. Motivation is a visitor. It comes and goes without asking your permission. You cannot control when it arrives or how long it stays. But action is a choice. Every moment of every day, regardless of how you feel, you have the ability to choose what you do next. That choice might feel hard. It might feel nearly impossible, but it remains a choice. The disciplined life is not built on feeling motivated. It's built on honoring commitments to yourself even when, especially when, motivation has abandoned you. You will have more zero motivation days. They're not exceptions. They're part of the process. And each one you survive makes you stronger, more capable, more certain that feelings don't control your life. In Chapter 8, we enter Week 3. This is where the pressure intensifies, where setbacks are most likely to occur, where everything you've built gets tested by the reality of an imperfect life. You'll learn how to handle the inevitable failures that are coming, how to recover from missed days without spiraling, how to maintain discipline when external circumstances attack your carefully designed systems. The easy part of this journey is over. Now we find out what you're really made of. Chapter 7.5. The Comeback. A story that will change you. I need to tell you a story, not a theory, not a principle, not another framework or technique. A real story about a real person who is exactly where you might be right now, maybe even worse. A story that still gives me chills every time I think about it. His name was Marcus, and 3 years ago, he was planning to end his life. I'm not saying this for shock value. I'm saying it because you need to understand how far down a person can fall and how far up they can climb when they discover the power of discipline. This chapter is different from everything else in this book. There are no action steps at the end, no protocols to follow, just a story that I believe will change something inside you. Because sometimes, what we need isn't more information. It's proof that transformation is possible. Marcus was 41 years old when he hit rock bottom. From the outside, his life had looked successful for years. He'd built a marketing agency from nothing, grown it to 30 employees, and was making more money than he ever imagined. He had a wife, 2 kids, a house in the suburbs, and all the markers of a life well lived. But inside, everything was falling apart. The agency consumed him. 18-hour days became normal. He stopped exercising. He stopped sleeping properly. He started drinking. First a glass of wine to unwind, then a bottle, then more. Food became his only comfort. In 3 years, he gained 85 pounds. His wife tried to reach him. She begged him to slow down, to take care of himself, to be present with the family. But Marcus couldn't hear her. He was too busy chasing a success that never felt like enough. Then came the day that shattered everything. His biggest client, representing 40% of his revenue, pulled their contract. No warning, no negotiation, just gone. Within 6 months, Marcus had to lay off 22 people. People who had trusted him. People with families. He looked into their eyes as he handed them their final checks, and something inside him broke. 3 months later, his wife filed for divorce. She said she hadn't recognized him for years. She said she was tired of being married to a ghost. She took the kids and moved to her mother's house, and Marcus found himself alone in a home that suddenly felt like a tomb. That's when the thoughts started. I need to pause here and say something important. If you're experiencing thoughts of self-harm or suicide, please reach out for help. This is a sensitive topic, and if anything I'm describing resonates with personal struggles you're facing, I want you to know that support exists. We can talk about finding resources if that would help. For Marcus, the darkness was real, but so was what came next. Marcus told me later that the turning point came on the most ordinary morning imaginable. He woke up at 11 a.m., hungover, surrounded by empty bottles and takeout containers. He hadn't showered in 4 days. His phone was filled with messages he hadn't answered, from his sister, his mother, his former business partner. All worried, all ignored. He walked to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. And for the first time in months, he actually saw himself. 263 pounds on a frame that used to carry 180. Bloodshot eyes, gray skin, a face he didn't recognize belonging to a man he didn't know. And in that moment, something shifted. Not motivation. He'd felt motivated before, hundreds of times, and it had never lasted. This was different. This was a cold, quiet realization that he had exactly 2 choices: change everything or lose everything that remained, including himself. He didn't feel inspired. He didn't feel hopeful. He felt nothing except a tiny, stubborn refusal to let this be the end of his story. That afternoon, Marcus made his bed for the first time in weeks. He threw away the bottles. He took a shower. And he made a decision that would alter the trajectory of his entire life. He committed to 30 days of discipline. Not to save his business. Not to win back his wife. Not even to lose weight. Just to prove to himself that he still had some control over his own existence. The first week was brutal. Marcus couldn't exercise. His body was too broken. His joints too damaged from the extra weight. So he started with walking. 10 minutes a day. That was his micro task. 10 minutes of putting one foot in front of the other. He set his alarm for 7 a.m. and got out of bed when it rang. Not because he wanted to, because he decided to. He made his bed every morning. He drank water instead of alcohol. He ate one healthy meal a day, just one, to start. The resistance was overwhelming. Every cell in his body screamed for comfort, for the numbing embrace of alcohol, for the temporary relief of junk food, for the escape of sleep. But Marcus had discovered something in that bathroom mirror. He'd seen where comfort leads. He'd seen the destination of the easy path. And he refused to go back. Day after day, he showed up. Not with enthusiasm. Not with motivation. With nothing but raw, grinding determination to complete his tiny commitments. By the end of week 1, he'd walked 70 minutes total. He'd made his bed 7 times. He'd stayed sober for 7 days. It wasn't impressive by any external measure, but internally, something had begun to shift. For the first time in years, Marcus had kept a promise to himself. Week 2 nearly broke him. On day 10, his soon-to-be ex-wife called to discuss the divorce settlement. The conversation was cold, businesslike, final. Everything they'd built together reduced to numbers on a spreadsheet. Marcus hung up the phone and stared at the cabinet where he used to keep the whiskey. The craving was physical. A burning need that radiated from his chest to his fingertips. His mind generated every possible excuse. You've earned this. One drink won't matter. You're going through a divorce. No one would blame you. You can start again tomorrow. He told me later that he stood in front of that cabinet for almost an hour. Not moving, not drinking, just standing there, feeling the full weight of his pain without trying to escape it. And then he put on his shoes and went for a walk. Not 10 minutes this time, 45 minutes. He walked until his legs burned and his lungs ached and his mind finally quieted. He walked until the craving passed and something like peace settled over him. That night, Marcus learned a lesson that no book could have taught him. The pain of discipline is nothing compared to the pain of regret. He had felt the pain of regret for years, the accumulated weight of every shortcut, every compromise, every moment he chose comfort over growth. That pain was unbearable. The pain of walking instead of drinking, that was temporary. And when it passed, it left behind something valuable. Proof that he was stronger than his urges. By week 3, people started to notice. His sister commented that he sounded different on the phone. More present. More alive. His mother cried when he called her back after weeks of silence. Marcus had lost 11 pounds. Not from any dramatic diet. Just from walking daily, eating one healthy meal, and not drowning his evenings in alcohol. His sleep improved. His mind cleared. The fog that had surrounded him for years began to lift. But the real transformation wasn't physical. It was identity. Marcus stopped seeing himself as a failure who was trying to recover. He started seeing himself as a disciplined person who was building a new life. The actions came first. The identity followed. He added a morning routine, 10 minutes of stretching, followed by writing 3 things he was grateful for. He started reading again, something he hadn't done in years. He reached out to a therapist and began processing the grief and shame he'd been burying. None of it was easy. Every day still required effort. The motivation he'd hoped would arrive never showed up. But discipline filled the gap. Discipline carried him when nothing else could. Day 23 was when Marcus faced his biggest test. His business partner from the failed agency reached out. He had an opportunity, a potential client who could restart everything. All Marcus had to do was fly to Chicago, give a pitch, and he could be back in the game. The old Marcus would have jumped at this chance, would have abandoned everything to chase the next success, the next validation, the next hit of achievement. But the new Marcus paused. He looked at his 30-day commitment. He thought about what had happened the last time he sacrificed his health, his relationships, his discipline for business success. He remembered the man in the mirror, and he said no, not forever, not to the idea of working again, just no to this opportunity, right now, in the middle of his transformation. He needed to finish what he started. He needed to prove to himself that he could complete something that mattered, something that had nothing to do with money or status or external validation. That decision cost him financially. The opportunity went to someone else. But Marcus told me it was the most important no of his life, because it proved that he had changed. The old Marcus couldn't say no to anything that promised success. The new Marcus could prioritize his own rebuilding over someone else's timeline. Day 30 arrived on a quiet Sunday morning. Marcus woke up at 6 a.m., not because an alarm forced him, but because his body had adapted to the rhythm. He made his bed. He stretched. He walked for an hour through his neighborhood as the sun rose. He had lost 18 pounds. He hadn't had a drink in 30 days. He had kept every single promise he made to himself. But those weren't the real victories. The real victory was the man he saw in the mirror that morning. Still overweight. Still facing a divorce. Still rebuilding from the ashes of a failed business. But present. Clear-eyed. Alive in a way he hadn't been for years. Marcus didn't stop on day 31. He continued. 90 days. Then 180. Then a full year of daily discipline. Today, Marcus is 53 pounds lighter than his rock bottom. He runs a small consulting practice. Intentionally small, because he learned that growth without boundaries is just another form of self-destruction. He sees his kids every other week and has rebuilt a relationship with them based on presence rather than presence. He never reconciled with his wife. Some things can't be fixed, only accepted. But he told me recently that he's grateful for the divorce, not because it didn't hurt, but because the pain forced him to become someone he actually respects. Why did I tell you this story? Not to impress you with a dramatic transformation, not to suggest that your situation is as dire as Marcus's was, but to show you something essential about discipline that principles and frameworks can never fully capture. Discipline isn't about being perfect. Marcus wasn't perfect. He struggled every single day. He wanted to quit constantly. He had no special talent for self-control. In fact, his entire life had proven the opposite. Discipline is about continuing anyway. It's about making the next right choice, even when you've made 1,000 wrong ones. It's about refusing to let your past determine your future. Marcus didn't transform because he found motivation. He transformed because he took action without motivation and let the results eventually generate their own momentum. He didn't transform because he had support. For most of his 30 days, he was completely alone. No coach, no accountability partner, no one watching. He did it for himself, by himself, because he decided that his own opinion of himself was the only one that ultimately mattered. He didn't transform because it was easy. Every single day was hard. But he learned that hard and impossible are not the same thing. Hard just means it requires effort. And effort, applied consistently, changes everything. Here's what I want you to take from Marcus's story. Whatever you're facing right now, whatever failures are behind you, whatever obstacles are in front of you, whatever voice in your head is saying you can't do this, It's not as powerful as your ability to choose. You can choose to make your bed tomorrow morning. You can choose to take a 10-minute walk. You can choose to keep one small promise to yourself, even when everything inside you wants to give up. Those choices seem insignificant. Marcus making his bed on day 1 seemed insignificant. But that insignificant choice was the first brick in a completely rebuilt life. You are one decision away from a completely different trajectory. Not one motivated feeling. Not one inspired moment. One decision, followed by another, followed by another, until the accumulation of decisions creates a person you're proud to be. Marcus was 41 when he hit rock bottom and 42 when he emerged. It's never too late. It's never too broken. It's never too far gone. If a man who was planning to end his life can become someone who wakes up grateful for each new day, then whatever you're facing is survivable too. I share Marcus's story with his permission. He wanted you to hear it. He said that during his darkest days, what he needed most wasn't more information about habits or discipline or self-improvement. What he needed was proof that someone had been where he was and made it out. Consider this chapter that proof. You're not alone in your struggle. You're not uniquely broken. You're not facing anything that discipline, applied consistently, cannot overcome. The next chapter deals with week 3, the pressure point where most transformations fail. You'll face challenges. You'll face setbacks. You'll face days when giving up seems like the only reasonable option. When those days come, remember Marcus. Remember that he stood in front of a liquor cabinet for an hour and chose to walk instead. Remember that he said no to a business opportunity because his transformation mattered more than his income. Remember that he kept going when he felt nothing, no motivation, no hope, no guarantee that any of it would work. And remember that today, he's living proof that the 30 days you're in the middle of can become the foundation of an entirely different life. Your story isn't finished yet. Neither is your transformation. Keep going. Chapter 8. Week 3. The pressure point. Everything you've built is about to be tested. Week 3 is where discipline goes to die. The statistics are brutal. Most people who start a 30-day challenge quit somewhere between day 15 and day 21. The initial excitement is gone. The finish line still feels distant. And life, real life, with all its chaos and demands, starts attacking your carefully constructed systems. This is the pressure point, the moment when external circumstances collide with internal resistance. The week when you discover whether your discipline is real or just a temporary performance. I'm not going to lie to you. This week will be hard, but it will also be the most important week of your transformation. Because pressure doesn't just test you, it reveals you. Let me tell you what's happening right now in your brain and your life. By week 3, the novelty circuits have completely shut down. Your mind no longer finds your new routine interesting or exciting. The dopamine hit from starting something new has vanished. What remains is the raw reality of repetition without reward. At the same time, the rest of your life hasn't paused to accommodate your transformation. Work pressure is building. Relationships demand attention. Unexpected problems arise. The comfortable excuses you rejected 2 weeks ago start sounding reasonable again. Maybe I took on too much. I'll get back to it when things calm down. This isn't the right time after all. This is the pressure point, when internal resistance and external demands attack simultaneously. And this is where most people break. But you're not going to break. You're going to bend, adapt, and keep moving. Ninth principle of discipline. Setbacks are not failures. They're data points. The only true failure is using a setback as permission to quit entirely. Read that again. Let it sink into your mind. You will have setbacks this week. Maybe you already have. Maybe you've missed a day, broken a commitment, slipped back into an old pattern. Maybe the pressure of life has already cracked your routine. Here's what I need you to understand. That's normal. That's expected. That's part of the process. The average person treats a setback as evidence that they can't change. They spiral into self-criticism, abandon the system entirely, and return to their old life feeling worse than before. The elite performer treats a setback as information. They ask, what happened? What can I learn? How do I adjust? And then they continue, without drama, without excessive guilt, without using the stumble as an excuse to stop walking. This distinction is everything. It's the difference between temporary struggle and permanent transformation. Let me give you a framework for handling setbacks that has saved my discipline countless times. It's called the 24-hour rule. When you miss a day, break a commitment, or fall short of your intentions, you have exactly 24 hours to get back on track. Not next week, not next Monday, 24 hours. Within that window, the neural pathways you've built remain intact. The identity you've been forming is still accessible. The momentum you've created can be recovered. But after 24 hours, the old patterns start reasserting themselves. The brain begins to interpret the break not as a temporary pause, but as a return to normal. Each additional day of inaction makes restarting harder. This is why people who miss one day often miss 10. The first day feels like a small exception, but without immediate correction, that exception becomes the new rule. So here's your protocol. If you stumble, you have until this time tomorrow to take action. Any action, the smallest possible version of your discipline, just enough to signal to your brain that you're still in the game. Miss your morning routine? Do a 2-minute version before bed. Skip your workout? Take a 5-minute walk before the day ends. Break your focus commitment? Complete one 15-minute block before sleep. The specific action matters less than the timing. Get back within 24 hours, and the setback remains a setback. Wait longer, and it risks becoming a collapse. Now let's talk about the external pressure that's attacking your systems. Life doesn't care about your 30-day plan. Deadlines appear. Emergencies happen. People need things from you. The world keeps demanding your time, your energy, your attention, regardless of your discipline goals. The average person sees external pressure as a valid reason to abandon internal commitments. The elite performer sees external pressure as the ultimate test of those commitments. Here's a truth that might be uncomfortable. If your discipline only works when life is calm, you don't have discipline. You have a hobby that requires perfect conditions. Real discipline operates under pressure. It bends without breaking. It adapts to circumstances without abandoning principles. This week, you're going to learn to be flexible without being weak. Here's how to maintain discipline when life attacks. First, identify your non-negotiables. From your entire routine, what are the 1 or 2 actions that absolutely cannot be skipped? These are your anchor habits, the minimum that keeps your identity intact. For me, it's making my bed and taking 3 conscious breaths before checking my phone. Everything else can flex. Those 2 cannot. When pressure mounts and time disappears, protect your non-negotiables at all costs. Let other things slide temporarily, but those anchor habits remain. Second, compress rather than eliminate. If you normally exercise for 30 minutes and today you only have 10, do 10 minutes with full intensity. If you normally meditate for 15 minutes and today you have 3, take 3 minutes of focused breathing. Compression maintains the habit loop. Your brain still gets the cue, the routine, and the reward, just in smaller doses. The neural pathway stays active. The identity stays intact. Elimination breaks the loop entirely. Your brain interprets it as, we're not doing that anymore. The pathway weakens. The identity fragments. Third, accept imperfection without accepting defeat. Some days during week 3 will be ugly. You'll do the bare minimum. You'll feel like you're barely holding on. Your performance will be far from ideal. That's okay. Ugly action beats beautiful inaction every single time. The goal isn't to be perfect under pressure. The goal is to survive the pressure with your core discipline intact. There's another element of week 3 I need to address, the deep work challenge. By now, your surface-level habits should be stabilizing. The microtasks are becoming more automatic. The environment is supporting your choices. The mental game is improving. But deep work, the kind of focused, undistracted effort that produces your most important results, requires a different level of discipline. Deep work means protecting extended blocks of time from interruption. It means saying no to urgent demands so you can serve important goals. It means controlling your attention in a world designed to steal it. Week 3 is when we start building this capacity. Here's your deep work protocol for days 15 through 21. Day 15. Identify your most important task, the one thing that would make the biggest difference if completed. Block 30 minutes tomorrow specifically for this task. Day 16. Complete your 30-minute deep work block. No phone, no email, no interruptions. Just focused action on your most important task. Day 17. Repeat the deep work block. Notice the resistance. Notice the pull toward distraction. Notice and continue anyway. Day 18. Extend to 45 minutes. The pressure of sustained focus will increase. Your mind will generate more excuses, more reasons to check something, more escape routes. Stay. Day 19. Return to 30 minutes. This isn't retreat, it's strategic recovery. Sustainable deep work requires variation, not constant escalation. Day 20. Attempt 2 separate 30-minute blocks, morning and afternoon. Notice how your capacity for focus changes throughout the day. Day 21. Reflect on the week. What did you produce during deep work? How did it feel? What resistance patterns emerged? This protocol introduces you to a level of discipline most people never reach. The ability to control your mind for extended periods. The power to produce meaningful work despite the pressure of a distracted world. Let me share what week 3 taught me about the nature of transformation. There was a day, I think it was day 17, when everything went wrong. A work crisis consumed my morning. A family issue demanded my afternoon. By evening, I had completed exactly 0 of my planned routine. I felt like a fraud. Like all my talk about discipline was just talk. Like I had failed publicly, proving to myself and everyone watching that I couldn't actually do this. And then I remembered the 24-hour rule. I had until this time tomorrow. So at 10 p.m., exhausted and defeated, I made my bed. I did 10 push-ups. I wrote 1 sentence. I took 3 breaths. It was pathetic by any normal standard. But it wasn't 0. And the next morning, I woke up still in the game. That night taught me something crucial. Discipline isn't about avoiding pressure. It's about responding to pressure. It's not about having perfect days. It's about recovering from imperfect ones. The pain of that day 17 was real. The laziness I felt afterward was overwhelming. The temptation to use the crisis as an excuse to quit entirely was powerful. But I took action anyway. Tiny, unglamorous action that no one would ever celebrate. And that action saved my 30 days. Here's what I want you to carry into this week. Pressure is coming. Setbacks are coming. Days when your carefully designed life collides with chaotic reality are coming. When they arrive, don't panic. Don't spiral. Don't interpret the struggle as evidence that you're not cut out for this. Interpret it as evidence that you're in week 3, exactly where transformation gets forged. Bend, adapt, compress, recover. Keep the chain unbroken by any means necessary. Control what you can control. Accept what you can't. And remember that the person who survives week 3 is not the same person who started day 1. You're being tempered now, hardened, prepared for a life of sustainable discipline rather than temporary bursts of motivation. In Chapter 9, we enter the final sprint, days 22 through 30, the home stretch where everything consolidates. You'll learn advanced techniques for locking in your gains, for preventing the post-challenge collapse that destroys most transformations, for building a routine that lasts not just 30 days, but 30 years. The pressure point is almost behind you. What lies ahead is completion. Chapter 9, the final sprint, days 22 to 30. You can see the finish line, 21 days behind you, 9 days ahead. The person who started this journey, uncertain, hopeful, maybe a little desperate, feels like a distant memory. You've survived the initial excitement. You've pushed through the motivation drought. You've bent under pressure without breaking. Now comes the final sprint, the last 9 days that will determine whether this transformation becomes permanent or fades into another, almost story you tell yourself. This chapter is about finishing what you started, not just crossing the line, but crossing it in a way that sets you up for the rest of your life. Let me tell you what separates people who complete transformations from people who almost complete them. It's not willpower. By day 22, everyone's willpower is depleted. It's not motivation. That ship sailed weeks ago. It's not even the systems you've built, though those help enormously. What separates finishers from almost finishers is a single mental shift, treating the final days as the most important, not the least. The average person relaxes as the end approaches. They think the hard work is done. They coast toward completion, assuming momentum will carry them across. The elite performer intensifies as the end approaches. They know the final days are when habits either lock in permanently or begin to decay. They finish stronger than they started. This distinction will determine the next year of your life. Here's what's happening in your brain during the final sprint. After 3 weeks of repetition, your neural pathways have deepened significantly. The actions that once required conscious effort now feel more automatic. You've crossed into the territory where discipline starts becoming identity. But there's a danger zone here that most people don't recognize. Your brain, sensing that the challenge is nearly over, begins preparing to return to normal. It starts asking questions like, what will we do after day 30? And can we go back to sleeping in soon? And this was temporary, right? If you let these thoughts run unchallenged, they'll undermine everything you've built. Your mind will treat day 30 as an ending rather than a beginning. And the habits you've fought so hard to establish will start eroding the moment you finish. The final sprint isn't just about completing 30 days. It's about convincing your brain that this is your new permanent reality. 10th principle of discipline. The end of a challenge is the beginning of a lifestyle. How you finish determines how you continue. This is why the final 9 days matter so much. You're not just building habits anymore. You're programming your brain's expectations for the future. Every action you take during the final sprint sends a message. This is who I am now. This is how I live. There is no after, where I return to laziness and comfort. There is only forward. That message, repeated through consistent action, becomes your new default. Let me give you the final sprint protocol. Days 22 through 30, mapped out with precision. Day 22, the audit. Today, you review everything. Look back at the full journey. What worked? What didn't? Which habits stuck easily? Which required constant struggle? This isn't reflection for reflection's sake. This is strategic preparation. You're identifying which elements of your system deserve permanent status and which need modification. Write down your 3 strongest habits, the ones that feel most natural now. These are your foundation going forward. Write down your 3 weakest points, the areas where resistance still appears daily. These need attention in the final days. Day 23, the laziness confrontation. Today, you deliberately invoke your old patterns. Think about how you used to live. Remember the snooze button, the skipped workouts, the excuses that felt so reasonable. Let yourself feel the pull of that comfortable life. Then choose against it. Consciously, deliberately. This isn't masochism. It's inoculation. By confronting laziness directly, by feeling its pull and choosing discipline anyway, you strengthen your resistance to future temptation. The goal is to make laziness feel foreign, to create such distance between who you are now and who you were that returning feels impossible. Day 24, the intensity day. Today, you push beyond your normal routine. Add 10% to everything. If you usually exercise for 20 minutes, go for 22. If you usually do 1 deep work block, do 1.5. If you usually wake up at 6:30, wake up at 6:15. This isn't about proving something to anyone. It's about proving something to yourself, that you have capacity beyond your current limits, that the routine you've built isn't your ceiling, just your floor. Day 25, the recovery day. After intensity comes intentional recovery. Today, you return to your baseline routine. No pushing, no exceeding, just solid, consistent execution of your established system. This teaches your brain an important lesson. Discipline includes knowing when to rest. Sustainable performance requires rhythm, periods of push followed by periods of consolidation. Day 26, the repetition lock. Today is about pure repetition. No variation, no experimentation, just your core routine, executed with full presence and attention. By now, these actions should feel familiar, almost automatic. But today, you perform them as if for the first time. Notice every detail. Feel every movement. Anchor the neural pathways through conscious repetition. This deliberate attention transforms habit into ritual. It elevates routine to practice. And practice, repeated with awareness, becomes mastery. Day 27, the obstacle imagination. Today, you think about everything that could derail you after day 30. Holidays, vacations, work crises, illness, travel, life transitions. For each potential obstacle, create a specific plan. If I'm traveling, I will do this minimum routine. If I get sick, I will maintain these two anchor habits. If work explodes, I will protect this one non-negotiable. This is called implementation intention, and research shows it dramatically increases follow-through. By planning for obstacles before they arrive, you remove the decision-making burden in the moment. You've already decided what you'll do. You just have to execute. Day 28, the identity declaration. Today, you formally claim your new identity. Not, I'm trying to be disciplined. Not, I'm working on my habits. I am a disciplined person. Say it out loud. Write it down. Let it feel strange and presumptuous if it does. Because the truth is, after 28 days of consistent action, you've earned that identity. You've cast more votes for the disciplined version of yourself than most people cast in a year. Own it. The identity you claim shapes the actions you take. And the actions you take reinforce the identity you claim. Day 29, the teaching day. Today, you explain your system to someone else. A friend, a family member, a colleague, anyone who will listen. Walk them through what you've learned. Share the principles. Describe the struggles and breakthroughs. Teaching forces integration. It requires you to organize your knowledge, articulate your insights, and defend your conclusions. The act of explaining cements understanding in a way that passive learning never can. And there's another benefit: accountability. By telling someone what you've built, you create external expectation. Walking away from your discipline now means walking away from a public commitment. Day 30, the continuation commitment. The final day is not a celebration of ending. It's a declaration of continuation. Today, you decide what your discipline looks like for the next 30 days. Not a new challenge, not a dramatic overhaul. Simply a continuation of the system you've built with whatever adjustments your audit revealed. You don't stop being disciplined on day 31. You don't take a break and return later. You continue because this is who you are now. Write down your commitment. Be specific. Create the same structure that carried you through the first 30 days. Because the first 30 days were never the goal. They were the training ground for the rest of your life. Let me address something that might be stirring in your mind. You might be thinking, what if I don't feel transformed? What if day 30 arrives and I still struggle with laziness? What if the discipline still feels like effort? Here's the truth. Transformation isn't a feeling. It's an accumulation of actions. You might not feel dramatically different on day 30 than you did on day 1. The internal experience of discipline might still involve resistance, discomfort, the constant pull toward easier paths. But look at what you've done. Look at the repetition you've maintained. Look at the moments when you chose action over comfort, discipline over laziness, growth over stagnation. That accumulation is transformation, regardless of how it feels. Feelings are lagging indicators. They catch up to behavior eventually. But behavior leads. Action leads. And you've been leading yourself toward a different life for almost 30 days now. Trust the process. Trust the repetition. Trust that what you've built is real, even if it doesn't always feel real. There's one more thing I need to say about the final sprint. These 9 days will reveal the depth of your commitment. Not because they're the hardest. Week 3 probably holds that title. But because they're the most revealing. Anyone can sprint when they're fresh. Anyone can push through the middle when the end feels distant. But finishing strong, when you're tired and the goal is in sight and the temptation to coast is overwhelming, that reveals character. The person you are in these final 9 days is the person you'll be going forward. So be the person you want to become. Show up like someone who finishes what they start. Execute your routine like someone who doesn't know how to quit. Because after 30 days of consistent action, that's exactly who you are. In the final chapter, we look beyond day 30. You'll learn how to maintain discipline for months and years, not just weeks. How to handle the inevitable periods when life disrupts your routine. How to build a sustainable system that grows with you. The sprint is almost complete. What comes next is the rest of your life. Chapter 10, Beyond 30 Days, Your New Life. You made it. 30 days ago, you were someone who wanted to change. Someone who hoped this time would be different. Someone who pressed play on an audiobook, uncertain whether the promises inside would hold true. Now look at you. You've rebuilt your mornings. You've rewired your mind. You've survived the motivation crashes, the pressure points, the days when every part of you wanted to quit. You've proven, not to anyone else, but to yourself, that you are capable of sustained, consistent discipline. This final chapter is not about celebration. It's about continuation. Because the 30 days were never the destination. They were the training ground for everything that comes next. Your new life starts now. Let me tell you about the most dangerous moment in any transformation journey. It's not the beginning, when everything feels hard. It's not the middle, when motivation disappears. It's not even week 3, when pressure threatens to break you. The most dangerous moment is the day after completion, day 31, when the challenge is officially over. When there's no structure forcing you forward. When your brain whispers, "We did it. We can relax now." This is where most transformations die. Not with a dramatic collapse, but with a quiet fade. One skipped morning becomes 2. 2 becomes a week. A week becomes, "I'll restart Monday." And before you know it, the discipline you fought so hard to build has evaporated like morning fog. I refuse to let that happen to you. Here's what you need to understand about the transition from challenge to lifestyle. During the 30 days, you had external structure, a timeline, a framework, the knowledge that you were in a defined period with a clear endpoint. This structure provided motivation even when motivation was absent. After day 30, that external structure disappears. And without something to replace it, your brain will default to its natural state, seeking comfort, avoiding effort, choosing the path of least resistance. The final principle of this book addresses this directly. 11th principle of discipline. Structure doesn't end when the challenge ends. You must create ongoing systems that make discipline the default, not the exception. This isn't about willpower. You've already learned that willpower is unreliable. This is about engineering your post-challenge life so that the habits you've built have no choice but to continue. Let me give you the architecture for sustainable discipline. First, establish your forever habits. From everything you've practiced over 30 days, identify 3 to 5 habits that will remain permanent. Not negotiable, not seasonal, not dependent on circumstances. These are the non-negotiables that define who you are now. For me, these are making my bed immediately upon waking, 15 minutes of focused work before any email or social media, physical movement every single day, and 3 minutes of reflection before sleep. These habits aren't impressive. They're not designed to be. They're designed to be sustainable, small enough to maintain during the worst days, consistent enough to compound over years. Your forever habits should feel almost too easy, because on the days when life attacks, and those days will come, you need actions you can complete regardless of circumstances. Second, create 90-day cycles. The 30-day challenge was a single cycle, but one cycle isn't enough to create permanent change. Research suggests that true habit formation, the kind that persists without conscious effort, requires multiple reinforcement cycles. So think in 90-day blocks. Each block builds on the previous one. Each block adds one new element while maintaining everything before. Each block deepens the neural pathways until discipline becomes as automatic as breathing. Your first 90 days after this challenge should focus purely on maintenance. Don't add new habits. Don't increase intensity. Just prove to yourself that you can sustain what you've built without the structure of a formal challenge. Third, schedule your reviews. What gets measured gets managed. Without regular review, even the best systems slowly degrade. Put a recurring appointment in your calendar. Weekly review, 15 minutes. Monthly review, 30 minutes. Quarterly review, 1 hour. During these reviews, ask yourself, am I still executing my forever habits? What's working? What's slipping? What adjustments do I need? This isn't bureaucracy. It's maintenance. Just as a car needs regular service to keep running, your discipline system needs regular attention to stay effective. Now let me address something that will inevitably happen. You will have relapses, periods when discipline falters. Days that stretch into weeks where your carefully built routines crumble under the weight of life's demands. This is not failure. This is reality. The average person treats a relapse as proof that they can't change. They interpret the setback as evidence of fundamental inadequacy. They abandon the system entirely and return to their old life, often worse than before because now they carry the additional weight of another failed attempt. The disciplined person treats a relapse as a temporary deviation from their true path. They acknowledge what happened, identify what caused it, and return to their system without excessive drama or self-punishment. Here's the framework for handling post-challenge relapses. When you notice discipline slipping, and you will notice because you've trained yourself to be aware, invoke the restart protocol. Step 1. Acknowledge without judgment. I've drifted from my routine. Not, I failed again, or I knew this wouldn't last. Just neutral observation. Step 2. Identify the trigger. What changed? Did travel disrupt your environment? Did stress consume your mental bandwidth? Did you stop doing your reviews? Something caused the drift. Find it. Step 3. Return to minimum viable discipline. Not your full routine, just your most basic anchor habit. Complete it today. Complete it tomorrow. Build momentum from the smallest possible action. Step 4. Rebuild gradually. Add elements back one at a time. Don't try to restore everything at once. That's how you got here in the first place. Step 5. Update your system. Whatever caused the relapse, reveal the weakness. How do you prevent it from happening again? What environmental change, what mental strategy, what structural adjustment will make you more resilient? This protocol has saved me more times than I can count. It transforms relapses from catastrophes into learning opportunities. It makes recovery part of the system rather than an admission of defeat. Let me paint a picture of where this path leads. Imagine yourself 1 year from now. 365 days of accumulated discipline. Not perfect days. You know now that perfection isn't the goal, but consistent days. Days where you showed up more often than you didn't. Days where the disciplined choice became the natural choice. What does that person look like? Their morning routine is automatic. They don't think about whether to exercise, they just do. Their environment is optimized so thoroughly that bad choices require effort. Their identity has fully shifted from someone trying to be disciplined to someone who is disciplined. The compound effect has worked its magic. The small actions, repeated hundreds of times, have created results that would seem impossible from where you stand today. The body is stronger. The mind is clearer. The work is better. The life is different. And the most remarkable thing? It didn't require heroic effort. It required consistency. It required showing up day after day and letting time do the heavy lifting. This future is not fantasy. It's mathematics. The same mathematics that turned your 30 days into transformation will turn your year into revolution. I want to leave you with something personal. Before I started my own 30-day journey, the one that eventually became the foundation for everything you've learned in this book, I was lost. Not dramatically lost, not rock bottom lost, just quietly, persistently lost in a life that looked fine from the outside but felt empty from within. I had potential. Everyone said so. But potential without discipline is just another word for waste. What changed wasn't my circumstances. It wasn't my motivation. It wasn't even my knowledge. I had read dozens of books about habits and productivity and self-improvement. What changed was my identity. I stopped being someone who wanted to be disciplined and started being someone who was disciplined. Not because I felt disciplined. Not because discipline came naturally. But because I made the choice thousands of times to act like a disciplined person until the acting became real. You've made that same choice now. 30 days of choices. 30 days of casting votes for the person you want to become. 30 days of proving that you are not controlled by your feelings, your comfort, your laziness, your excuses. You've earned this new identity. Now protect it. Here's my final challenge to you. Don't let this be another book you listened to and forgot. Don't let these 30 days become a pleasant memory that fades into the background noise of your life. Take action today, right now, before the last words of this chapter fade from your ears. Write down your forever habits. Schedule your first weekly review. Tell someone what you've accomplished and what you're committed to continuing. Make the transition from challenge to lifestyle immediate and concrete. Because the person you've become over these 30 days is not temporary. The discipline you've built is not borrowed. The transformation you've experienced is not a phase. This is who you are now. This is your new life. And it's only just beginning. One final thought. Somewhere out there, right now, someone is about to start their own 30-day journey. They're uncertain and hopeful, just like you were. They're wondering if this time will be different. Maybe one day you'll be the one who shows them it's possible. Maybe your transformation will inspire theirs. Maybe the discipline you've built will ripple outward in ways you can't yet imagine. That's the compound effect beyond yourself. The impact that extends past your own habits and into the lives of everyone who watches you live differently. Think about who's watching you right now. Your children, if you have them, are learning what discipline looks like not from what you say, but from what you do. Every morning you wake up early, they notice. Every time you choose growth over comfort, they're taking mental notes. You're not just building your own habits. You're programming theirs. Your partner, your friends, your colleagues. They've seen people talk about change before. They've watched others start strong and fade. But you didn't fade. You kept showing up. And somewhere in the back of their minds, a quiet question is forming. If they can do it, why can't I? That question is the spark. Your discipline is the match. You may never know the full impact of what you've built. The coworker who finally started exercising because they saw you doing it consistently. The friend who quit drinking because your transformation proved it was possible. The stranger who overheard you talking about your 30-day journey and decided to begin their own. This is the invisible legacy of discipline. It spreads without permission. It multiplies without effort. One person changes, and the people around them can never see the world quite the same way again. Years from now, someone might tell you that you changed their life, and you won't even remember the moment that planted the seed. A casual comment, a visible habit, the simple fact that you became living proof that transformation is real. This is what you've earned. Not just a better morning routine, not just improved health or sharper focus. You've earned the right to inspire without trying, to lead without speaking, to change the world by changing yourself first. The ripple has already begun. You just can't see how far it will travel. You pressed play 30 days ago hoping something would change. Everything has. Now go live the life you've built.